Ladies and gentlemen, I've gathered you here today to talk about my good name. The North Koreans have tried to drag my name through the mud. They've tried to disparage my honor, but my honor will stay intact. A few days ago, I released a Yeonmi Park video. I was kind of trying to strike a balance and figure out whether she was lying or not. I mean, she has a lot of very, very fishy stories from her past, and just recently she's released some weird stuff, some stuff that doesn't really ring true at all with kind of no sources. At some point she said Kim Jong-un was dying. It was certain he was definitely dying, and her sources were like a photo of him looking kind of tired and a 2-year-old article. Like, Yeonmi Park clearly has some bullshit going on. And we actually have some more evidence that she's not, I wouldn't say this is bullshitting, I would say she's outright lying. We have some pretty good evidence that she's outright lying to people. I'm going to release it with a guy called Cheeken, Cheeckeen. He has a documentary on North Korea in Yeonmi Park if you're interested in it. But after I released this Yeonmi Park video, I got some angry North Koreans, some bona fide North Koreans, which is kind of too bad because I always wanted to visit North Korea, and now they seem to be angry at me. And they were commenting on my video saying I was essentially a dull Westerner. So let's get into that. Extremely Rare DPRK video says, how can you call yourself unbiased? You base your analysis on the presumption that North Korea bad. So they're using like this orange man bad sort of thing. They're kind of using the memeology. If you don't know anything about North Korea, let me, as someone who knows about a fraction of a millimeter of knowledge about North Korea, to tell you what's going on. So people in North Korea can not get access to internet regularly. Essentially, you have to be in the elite class to get access to the internet. You have to be like at a top, at a university, which is pretty difficult to get into, or you have to be like, maybe a high-ranking member of the government, it seems like, to get access to the internet. So someone going on the internet and calling me names is probably working for the North Korean government, is what I would guess. And so, I'm not angry at this person. They're probably going to get cattle prodded if they don't say enough anti-Western things per hour. But I thought I would respond because it's pretty funny. And they're using North Korean bad, like it's the same as like the orange man bad meme format. Like, I'm pretty sure they were taught this because, as we all know, as most people seem to know, there is definitely a global collusion trying to, I believe they're trying to separate the West. I mean, it's this divide and conquer kind of Caesar type tactic. And we don't use warfare as much on land. We don't like kill people. That's very old fashioned. Nowadays, we just go on the internet and we start Christian Facebook groups and talk about the COVID vaccine. And then we have people argue endlessly over it. So it seems like they're kind of perpetuating this thing. And I'll get more into that later. They're kind of pressing on the cultural button points. And he says, how can you call yourself unbiased? Well, I did kind of slip up there because when I said I was being unbiased, I meant that I was making an unbiased video about Yeonmi Park. I was trying to be unbiased about whether or not she was lying. Now I think she's a fucking dirty liar, but before then I wasn't so sure. And so I was not being unbiased about North Korea. I think North Korea is a cruel dictatorship. I also think we should be nicer to them. I mean, all the sanctions that we're imposing on North Korea are starving them out. Like, we're starving out their citizens. America is to blame. So is the rest of the world. But North Korea could just become part of South Korea if they didn't want their citizens to starve. So it's not like it's a one-sided thing. They could also give up their nuclear weapons. So this isn't, it's multiple people are at fault here. Anyway, first you parroted the lie that that people were forced to cry during Kim Jong-il's death funeral, or were executed. I wasn't in North Korea at the time. There were a lot of people crying, and I would be very surprised if there were no punishments. I would bet my left finger that there were punishments for not crying at Kim Jong-il's funeral. I'll tell you what. And did you see any video of North Korean being executed for that, or literally anything? Look, honestly, now that you said that, I looked for North Korean execution videos and I found one. I don't usually go looking for North Korean or any execution videos. Execution videos aren't the sort of thing that I seek out on the internet. But if you go to northkoreanrefugees.com/dv/, you yourself can see a North Korean execution video. It's not super bloody, but it's obviously awful to watch. But I want to point out there that this person said, did you see any video of a North Korean being executed? So they didn't say people aren't executed in North Korea. They say, do you have footage of them being executed? They say, do you have proof? Because clearly cameras aren't just allowed willy-nilly to be filming all the time. You have very special camera privileges, and you would probably be executed if you brought a camera to an execution. Not only that, I mean, there are 24,000 people who escaped from North to South Korea, and many of them have stories of watching execution. So this person is kind of just trying to like bully me into saying, they're using this argument that because I haven't been there and I haven't seen the footage that none of this is happening. And look, North Korea right now is very reminiscent of like Russia or China back in the day, you know, under Stalin and Mao. And they were kind of these black holes. Like they didn't let many people in or out. And then when they did let them in, it was like, you know, the Russians would show like rosy-cheeked Russian women, and they would hang out and drink with the men and sing Russian songs. And people would go back saying, wow, everyone's so happy there. It's an amazing country. Meanwhile, you know, millions of people are in gulag starving. And North Korea is no different. I mean, it's a complete media blackout. And so a lot of what happens in North Korea is we have no idea, and we project a lot of what we think happens. So, you know, communists are probably right now saying that North Korea is a paradise and the West is just lying to us about everything. And then South Korea and the West also has an agenda to spread propaganda about North Korea. Now, I believe the West a lot more than I believe the communists. But I think there is an agenda to spread worse propaganda than people are actually experiencing. I think Yeonmi Park, you know, there's this kind of idea that, just to go back to North Korean defectors, there's this idea that like North Korean defectors, they're very discriminated against in South Korea. And so, you know, maybe you didn't have that bad of a life there, maybe you were in the upper echelons, but you go there and you tell some terrible, harrowing stories about what happened in North Korea, and suddenly you're getting media attention, you're getting more money, and suddenly you're revered by many people, and you have lots of media attention, and you kind of have this constant stream of money, maybe a book deal, and suddenly all your kind of fears of poverty are assuaged. And I don't know if that is what happened with Yeonmi Park. I do know that she is willingly lying to people, which I will hopefully show you guys in a few days. But yeah, you know, the West has its own agendas too. Like, we should probably be wary of both parties here, but I certainly believe that North Korea is somewhat of a hellhole for a lot of people. What you said in 909 of your video, she experienced none of that. She experienced hardships that most people on this earth, thankfully, don't have to experience. I mean, she saw bodies floating down the river. She saw a man disemboweled, begging for food. She saw, you know, bodies piled up in hospitals. Like, she saw the worst of the worst. You know, I think Yeonmi Park lied about a lot of stuff. I don't think she lied about seeing dead bodies. Maybe she didn't see them floating down a river specifically, although I think she probably did. Her family was well off because of illegal trading and copper trafficking. In fact, no one suffered any of that. So if you're not familiar with the 90s in North Korea, which, you know, why would many people be? There was something that happened called the Arduous March, and between 240,000 and 3.5 million people died in that era because of starvation. I mean, North Korea was not playing nice with the other children. It was throwing bombs at places where it shouldn't have thrown them. And essentially the West decided to cut off ties to them and decided to put sanctions on them so they couldn't get oil, they couldn't get many food items, things like that. And North Korea can't grow its own food. I mean, it's not a great country for agriculture. It's too cold. And so essentially people, hundreds of thousands of people starved. And I don't know what Yeonmi Park's life was like, but she certainly would have seen dead bodies. I mean, some estimates say that, you know, more than 1 in every 10 people died. Like, damn, dude, that's terrible. And then this person on YouTube is just saying, nobody suffered any of that. Like, God damn. And I could see if you were, you know, a person who wasn't very informed on this topic and you saw this, and maybe you were inclined towards communism or whatever, and you saw this comment, you might say, oh, the West is lying about everything. I haven't been to North Korea. This person who's from North Korea is saying it's a wonderful place. She's saying that there were no dead bodies in the streets. Like, and, you know, this is just kind of part of the propaganda machine that North Korea is churning out, unfortunately. North Korea is really good at a few things. They're really good at propaganda, clearly. People still believe that Kim Jong-il was born in a mountain cabin and his mother didn't have enough clothing, and so the soldiers all banded together and took their clothes and stitched them together for him or something like that. And I think Kim Jong-il invented math or something like that. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, there's just some crazy shit happening in North Korea. They're good at propaganda, and they're obviously they're trying to spread propaganda into the West. Good for them. I mean, give it the old college try, I guess. So then you call DPRK a cult, you realize you racist, you are being here. And look, racism is, I'm sure that they've been taught that if anyone criticizes the DPRK, they should just call them racist, because Westerners love to fucking argue about racism until the cows come home. I swear to God, that's all we do. That's like half of everyone's hobbies is arguing about racism. Clearly, I mean, it's crazy that, clearly I'm not being racist. Cultish behavior is kind of present in every single race. I mean, and we think of cultish behavior as Scientology and like Jim Jones, drinking the Kool-Aid, but actually cult-like behavior can be found anywhere. Pimps usually use it with prostitutes, domestic abuse situations. Multi-level marketing schemes are pretty rife with cult-like behavior, and it's a spectrum, right? So some organizations and people have like really like a bunch of these symptoms of cult-like behavior, and some have like only a few. But if you're ever interested, I'm going to go through it now. It's freedomofmind.com. Stephen Hassan is a genius with cult-like behavior, and he has this model called the BITE model, and it's all about like the different ways that cults operate. And so let's see what North Korea has and whether it has any of these symptoms. I won't go through them all, but here's one. Dictate where, how, and with whom the member lives and associates or isolates. Okay, so North Koreans aren't allowed to leave the country. So I think that that pretty much counts as one. And they're also not allowed to like leave their region oftentimes if they don't have the right, if they're not like a party member. And look, I think someone commented on this guy, this DPRK Daily guy, who commented on my video and asked him if he can leave. And he said, yes, North Koreans are free to leave. We just need to have no criminal record. And like, that's the biggest load of shit I've ever heard. I mean, so North Koreans are free to leave, but for some reason, none of them do. I guess they all love North Korea so much that they're not allowed to leave. And the ones that do have these harrowing stories. The 24,000 that do have these stories of swimming across frozen rivers and dodging bullets to get out. But anyone's allowed to leave, of course. Control types of clothing and hairstyles. I mean, it's well known that North Korea has only a certain amount of hairstyles that they are allowed to have. There's like, men have a choice of maybe 5 or 10 different hairstyles. Regulate diet, food and drink, hunger, and or fasting. Well, I think North Korea has had some regulation of their hunger. Manipulation and deprivation of sleep. This is a really, this is actually more important than we think. I think sleep is one of the major issues in our society. If you are arguing with people online and just getting angry at people and like hate the other side, whatever side you're on, if you hate some people genuinely and it's bothering you, like, get some sleep. Maybe you need to be getting more sleep. I seriously, if you aren't like sleeping and then waking up naturally, then, if you could like be sleeping in a lot more, I mean, oh man, most Americans, I think the majority of Americans nowadays don't get enough sleep. I think the average amount of sleep for an American is something like 6 hours a night, which is fucking atrocious. Cults use this all the time because if somebody doesn't get enough sleep, they actually can't process information correctly. And so like, they'll be taking in and consuming information that they're just not processing, and then, you can just tell them whatever, and they just can't filter it out, essentially. And on top of that, I think lack of sleep can maybe put in a sense of like, I think it puts us in a more warlike state of being. I think it puts us in the state of like, oh, we're in such a stressful time, we must have to attack the other side or whatever it is. So if you're not getting enough sleep, I mean, that's number one. Don't think about fucking hustle culture, think about sleep. Rewards and punishment used to modify behaviors, both positive and negative. Well, I would say that executing people is probably counted in this. Discourage individualism, encourage groupthink. I don't know what the indie art scene is like in North Korea. I I haven't seen a lot of art coming out of it, a lot of rap music. I haven't seen a lot of pink hair even. You're simply parroting the lies which the media has been feed you since forever without any knowledge about Far East country with a totally different culture and system. Typical Western ignorance. Maybe I am being a typical ignorant Westerner. Look, I think North Korea has provided us with a lot of useful ideas. For instance, I think a lot fewer of you should have access to the internet. I genuinely think that if you're on the internet calling people Nazis, I think you probably deserve your internet time revoked. Maybe you don't get the internet anymore. Maybe you have to go outside. If you share fake news online, and I mean really fake news, like if you share like a celebrity death that didn't happen and you can't fact check things, maybe you deserve to go to a salt mine for a little bit, okay? It doesn't need to be a long time, just enough to like get you some sunshine, you know, get you some exercise, go outside. I think a lot fewer people need to eat. I'm not saying we should starve people, but like we could a lot of people in this country could afford to cut some meals. Okay, so I mean, North Korea doesn't have everything wrong, and they seem very patriotic. They seem to love their country, so good for them. Very very enthusiastic people. They're all about how great their country is. I like that. I like the positivity there. Maybe we need more of that. In the description you write, journalistic investigations. Sure, if your bar is set to as low as that of the Western media, then you could call it so. Ouch. That one stung a little bit. You know what? It's better if you stay quiet if you don't know much about a particular topic. So that was cool. And like, you know, that's cool. If you're watching this DPRK person, if you ever escape from your country, your prison and cult of a country, feel free to hit me up and then we can go grab a coffee sometime. Because I'm sure that you are a lovely person and you're just doing what you need to do to not get murdered by the officials. But yeah, this was interesting because it really does, this really does paint a picture of like, from the outset, if you haven't really done a lot of research in North Korea, which, you know, there are so many things to research. We just don't have time to research everything. So if you look at it from the outskirts, it looks like I'm being a fucking idiot in my video, and this real legitimate North Korean comments on it and says, hey, you don't have any evidence of public executions. They didn't even happen, and they didn't, you know, expect me to actually go and find some. You know, and they're just completely acting like the arduous march never happened. I mean, 240,000 people at the minimum, and they're acting like nothing ever happened, like they were planting flowers the whole time, and that the Western media made it all up. And if you were a 16-year-old kid deciding whether or not to be a communist, I could see how you would believe this, and it's kind of insidious. And that's really, you know, to my further point, like, there is a war, there's a cyber warfare going on right now of trying to brainwash people to believe different things. And do you notice that like most people you talk to aren't fucking idiots, but on the internet they all seem to be, like 90% of them have no arguments and don't seem to have any good ideas. Maybe that's because some of them are agents. Like we probably talk, not Asians, agents. We probably talk to a bunch of agents online and don't even realize it. I mean, and nowadays it's look up GPT-3 on Reddit. There's a bot, an AI bot that has legit conversations with people on Reddit all the time, posts all these really great posts and comments, and it's just a bot. Like I could be talking to a bot right now. That's the extent of this. Like, I think a bot might have better grammar, although it might not. It might be a really great disguise. So, you know, I think the best thing we can probably do to kind of, if we want to unite our culture, which some of us don't seem to want to do, if we want to like kind of unite everyone again, the best thing might just be to try to reach across the aisle and genuinely get to know people and like not assume the worst of people all the time. Because otherwise people like this wonderful North Korean gentleman here that I assume is a gentleman, I guess. Maybe it's not. Maybe they're non-binary. I wonder how non-binary people go in North Korea. Do you think there are any? Do you think there are like a lot of Zers in North Korea? There's legitimate actors out here trying to make us fight amongst each other, and so we can't, you know, get anything accomplished in the world. It's like a, you know, if there's a technological race, you want the other side to be incapacitated, and I think that's what's happening. So anyway, that was fun. If you want to follow me, I would love that. And I also have the Brave browser if you want to give me free internet money. That would be fantastic. I'll talk to you later. Thank you.